And they just realized that the gods did not have everything under control, actually. And karma became, instead of ritual action, it became your ethical action. Do you kill people? Do you steal from them? Do you abuse them sexually? Do you lie to them? Do you slander them, and so forth? You think such negative thoughts, 3 types of harmful, greedy, and unrealistic, deluded thoughts. And these things became your karma. And so you have the power and the responsibility to shape your own experience and your own outcomes by how you behave and what you think and what you know. And this again gave the individual tremendous power. And they got out of being trapped in a monistic caste system and underneath the authority of the gods and the Kshatriya kings, of which Buddha was one. And he betrayed his class, and he got into peace and nonviolence. And I love the guy. Actually, really what I wanted to tell you today among academics. What, we're out of time already? Finished? We had a real half hour? We started late. I don't want to be cheated. Okay, the time goes quickly when you talk. So the main point I wanted to say is I do love the Buddha. Because the reason I attached myself to him really 60, 70, 65 years ago was that finally someone told me that I could understand life and the world, and that I could do something about the situation and develop a yoga of the mind and the emotions and the intellect. And that I had to do that, actually, if I wanted to deal with things. I couldn't just depend on some God. I couldn't depend on some community of scientists. Both sides tell you can't understand yourself. And then Freud, terrible, he tells you're a helpless victim of your own unconscious. So he's made everybody scared of themselves because they have all these negative impulses in their unconscious. And then they project that negativity and things that other people do. And they assume they're doing what they do out of some negative thing. And that's a really, Freud, Darwin, Marx, they make you helpless. Buddha takes biology and psychology, and he gives you something you can do about your situation. And that is why I love the Buddha very much. But then final thing here, I'm not into Buddhist versus Hindu's routine, which is why I really like the concept of this culture, of this conference. They get rid of the ism, or the self versus no self, all these stereotypes. Buddha is a team effort. The enlightenment of the mid-first millennium in the axial age in 500 BCE was a team effort. And Patanjali, Panini, Badarayana, and many great rishis, they were all doing this rebellion against the grip of the Vedic ritual. And they wanted to bring the individual into fulfilling and they introduced moksha, freedom and liberation, into the culture. And as the Prime Minister said, that India's cardinal principle is non-war, non-violence, self-control and self-conquest, not other conquest. And that comes from that axial age religion, but unfortunately the job is not yet finished. It is up to us to finish it. And we're doing our best, and India is doing its best. And the IBC is doing its best to help India do that, and I'm delighted. And I didn't get a chance, maybe in my next talk I can talk about karma as a biological Darwinian type theory, but one in which the individual's evolution is at stake. The individual can contribute to their own evolution, and actually it can go on life after life. And it also makes each one of you who have become a human being proud of yourself. Because you've been every other kind of animal in a beginningless biological world, and you have finally decided to be this weird human being with these funny fingers and this 2 legs and strong skin, no fangs, and you have to build guns and knives and things. But if you want to be violent, but human is really quite gentle, and then especially the humans are blessed by the more enlightened half of the human beings, which are the females. Not the males. Sorry, guys. The females are more aware, naturally, of relativity and interconnectedness, and less inclined to try to depart for the absolute than the males. And therefore, they're more advanced in the bodhisattva direction toward enlightenment, which is where you completely embrace all life and you become conscious and care for all life. So that's it. So I know I'm out of time. Thank you very much, and I hope this is a good start.
Thank you very much, sir. An accomplished author, a riveting speaker, and a renowned professor of Buddhist studies in the Department of Religion at Columbia University. Many hats to his credit. Thank you once again, sir. So, ladies and gentlemen, with this, we move on to the first session of this summit. The theme we have for the first session is Buddha, Dharma and Peace. And our moderator for this session is Dr. Christy Yuling Chang.
Dr. Christy Urchin.
May I request Dr. Christy, who is the moderator, and other speakers, Venerable Farmaha Hansa Dhamma Haso, Thailand, Dr. Ratnajyoti Kakumanu, USA, Dr. Nimrut Chinmen from Israel.
Chang.
Can I request you to kindly take your seat, ma'am? Dr. Nanza Holland from Denmark. The illustrious members. I would request Dr. Daminda Porge, Deputy Secretary, to kindly come on the dais to felicitate our moderators and the other speakers, please. Firstly, Dr. Christy Yuling Chang will be felicitated with a khadg.
Dr. Christy арга хэмжээг нээх болно.
Then we have Venerable Farmaha Hansa Dhamma Haso from Thailand.
Thailand ерөнхий дээд хувраг.
Then we have Dr. Nimrut Chinmen from Israel.
Израилийн доктор Nimrut.
Then we have Dr. Nanja Holland from Denmark. Is she there?
Dr. Nanja Golland.
Dr. Nanja Holland from Denmark, is she there?
Тэр энд байна уу?
Okay. Then we have Dr. Ratnajyoti Kakumanu. She is an Indian, presently settled in USA. A hearty welcome to you too, ma'am. Thank you very much, sir. Before we begin this first session, I would like to say a few words about Dr. Christy Yuling, who is the moderator. She is the president IBC Taiwan, a prolific linguist, translator, and educator. Dr. Chang is a leading Buddhist activist, prominently active in International Association of Buddhist Women, which she headed between 2009 to 2013. Since 2017, Dr. Chang was elected as one of the 8 joint presidents for IBC. During the pandemic, in addition to continuing to lead her organization, speaking and moderating various online webinars, and writing for various organizations and publications. She has also started spreading compassion and wisdom through singing. Her first album has been released on all major digital platforms. So please join our hands together and welcome the moderator and the panelists and the speakers for the first session.
Om Dale do le soha. 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 I figure that it's always most effective to call upon the green Tara, the female Buddha, to help bring everyone's attention together. Namaste. Well, I'm also chanting this because it has a lot to do with the theme of our panel, which is the Buddha, Dhamma, and world peace. When I first released the music video of this chant, the Ukrainian war broke out. And 3 young women, one Ukrainian, one Russian, and one American, came to me asking me for the permission to use that music video for their silence auction session in an Indian restaurant in Taipei in order to raise funds for those who could not escape in Ukraine. So I wanted to share that chant with you too. And thank you for coming to the session. I noticed that everyone has a lot to say, and in the interest of time, if I may, point your attention to this book, page 48. We have all the bios of the speakers for this session, starting from page 48. And each of our speakers will have 20 minutes. You're gonna hear, I think I noticed, I heard the ding 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 sound. 3 minutes before 20 minutes ends up, and you're gonna hear another reminder that the screen is going to show, oops, sorry, just now I saw, then that's time's up, all right? So let me just, read out the name of our presenters and the topic. Our first speaker will be Venerable Dr. Paramahansa Dhammahaso, who is the professor of International Buddhist Studies College in Thailand. So, and our Venerable will be speaking on mindfulness-based meditation, the tool to create sustainable peace. So Venerable, the floor is yours. Yes, please.
Respected to most venerable Mahasangha and friends in the Dhamma. As Prime Minister mentioned in the morning, we have to follow Pariyatti, Patipatti, and Pativeda Dhamma. The Dhamma I will share with you today, we have to bring whatever we learn from Tripitaka, then apply or implement Buddha Dhamma in community and society. And today as well, the thing I would like to share with you, I will share the thing I have done so far, and I would like to thank IBSC and organizer who give me a chance to come here to share my experiences that I have done for 20 years. For this next slide, next slide please. Yeah. And so far we work together with Thai government. Because Thai government, they think that there are too many conflicts in community and society in
Талын
Thailand.
дэдсэн газар нийгэмд
And
маш
to
их
fight each other,
зөрчилдөөн
to beat
бий
each
олчихно
other.
гэж үздэг.
So it is the time for Thai government and Thai people have to set up
Талын дэдсэн газар болон ард түмэн
Deputy Mediation Act, Dispute Mediation Act for 5 years ago. So the problem is when we have Dispute Mediation Act, how can we train mediator? How can we train mediator, especially apply Buddha teaching to apply to train many people who have to be mediator? So for this, Mahachulalongkorn Buddhist University, especially MA and PhD program in peace study, we have to prepare for that. We have to do research and to find a way to train Thai people and monks to be professional mediator. We call peace engineer. For those we have to train them all, we call peace engineer. Especially the all monk and lay come to be trained together to be professional mediator. It is in the court. I have to go to the court to train judge, to train many people who live in there and give the certificate. And many times we sign MOU with many organizations to work together, especially we open International Mediation Center. International Mediation Center. It's not just for Thai people, but foreigners who go to Thailand to work in there. When the conflict, how can we bring them all to negotiate and to deal and work together peacefully? When we look back to preamble to Constitution of UNESCO, declare that sin wars begins in the mind of the man. It is the mind of the man that defenses of peace must be constructed. War is here, inside your mind. Peace is here, inside your mind. If we have to build peace inside our mind, we have to start from here. In order to overcome war that occur inside our mind as well. It is standing point of the Buddhism. Buddhism deny any violent war and negative conflict. That's why when we talk about this, there are two kinds of conflict. Conflict and war is within. Peace is in within as well. So let me show you something. Mindfulness is the main topic I would like to share with you today. Is the foundation of world peace. War is not outside world, but it is inside world. But everything is here. If you have to be mindful, peace, everything begins from mindfulness. Compassion society comes from mindfulness. So because of this, we have to prepare especially backbone of Buddhism. When we talk about backbone of Buddhism, we call the Four Noble Truths. The dukkha, it is a negative conflict. Samudaya is cause of negative conflict. Nirodha is the peace. Magga is the peaceful means to build peace inside our mind and society. That's the backbone of peace building. See, for this, in order to train meditator, we have to train them all to be mediator. Meditator come from mediator. We have to train them all, especially to manage inner conflict. Because inner conflict occurs inside our mind. So we have to practice mindfulness in order to deal with inner conflict, to develop inner peace. Then we have to go somewhere to manage outer conflict in community and society in order to build outer peace at the end. For this, I would like to bring you, because the time is short now. This is from my experiences. Recall. This recall 3M. You see, the first one, meditator. The second one, mediator. But eventually, we have to cultivate mindfulness inside there. So after that, they can go somewhere to build. This is very important. That's why I try to explain to you all. Mindfulness, that is the foundation of peace. So, as if they all have to be mediator, we have to start to train them all to be mindful. That's the first one. Train them all to be mindful for what? Because when two parties, they conflict with each other, they don't like to talk together anymore. They so suffer. Because of this, we have to bring them all to be mindful first. For what? In order to manage their emotions. To make them calm. To make them calm. When they calm, they are ready to listen to each other. When they all listen to each other, they will get issue analysis. They will know exactly. They will understand exactly what about issue from each other, from two parties. When they know exactly about issue, at that time, there we have attitude equation. We try to balance. In terms of Buddhism, we call Titti Samanyata. That is Titti Samanyata, to try to bring them all to understand each other. We call right understanding or samadhi. After that, they will trust each other. When they understand what you are thinking, then they will trust each other. When they trust each other, they would be able to find interest. What about your interest? I listen to you, then I will get all this your interest. I will respond to you. After that, we have to choose option. When they can find interest already, come on. We choose which option that is good for us, you and me. We have to choose best option about us. The last one, new relationship and new future will occur. The goal of mediation, the last goal, that is to bring them all to love, to live together peacefully. That is the main goal of mediation. When we come back here, mediation, you can see one by one, there is a 9 word or 9 step of mediation. Then we can see, right? They always see the value. They can, when they understand the value, they will understand the structure, the way they have to live together in organization or society. At the end, they will understand data, relationship, and interest. I will come here to conclude to you all everything about main concept that we tried to do in the past in Thailand for 10 years ago. When we have Dispute Mediation Act, so what is the main idea? We have to bring them all to study. Input, we have to put mindfulness, tolerance, and inner peace. The second step, bring them all to understand the backbone of peace building in Buddhism, especially the Four Noble Truths. The first one, bring them all to understand 9 steps. That is the find a way to bring them all to negotiate or bring them all to live together peacefully. And the last one, we all would be able to find peaceful community and society. Let me conclude everything. At this time, when we talk about mindfulness, they all understand that if you all would like to understand and learn how to practice mindfulness, you have to go to monastery.
Үний сурахын
You
тулд
have to
хийдэд
go
очих
to meet
ёстой
monk at monastery. That's not true.
гэж үздэг. Энэ
Wherever you have body and
үнэн
mind,
биш.
there you can find mindfulness inside there.
Танай
Body
дотроосоо
and mind go
олох
everywhere.
ёстой, олж чадна.
Mindfulness will go along with body and mind all the time. If they all would be able to maintain, develop and maintain mindfulness, mindfulness will bring peace to those who suffer because of conflict and live together peacefully and community and society. Thank you very much.
Нийгэмд ийг авчрах хэрэгтэй. Баярлалаа.
Thank you, Bande. Well, you haven't really used up all your time. Thank you for saving the time. Since Bande hasn't used up his time, I think I owe him a short introduction. I should go ahead. So, Venerable, whom you just heard of, he first got ordained as a Theravada Buddhist monk at Wat Chana, Songkhram, Thailand. In July 1993,
1993 онд Theravadaгийн хувраг болсон.
University and Thailand, and an MA from Thammasat University, Thailand, and a PhD also from Mahachulalongkorn University. So currently, Bande, as mentioned, is the director. He's also a secretary to the director of International Association of Buddhist University, IABU, and director of the International Buddhist Studies College, Mahachulalongkorn University. Thank you, Bande. Thank you. All right, and our next speaker.
Дараагийн илтгэгч.
Cut it short. Okay, all right. Our next speaker will be Dr. Nimrod Shemand, founder and director of Israel Center of Mindfulness in Education Israel.
Израилийн төвийн захирал үүсэн байгуулагч. Dr. Nimrod Shemand.
Bachelor of Science, ND, is one of the Israel's leading mind-body experts and an international spokesperson advocating holistic education and mindfulness in education perspectives. So you can, again, find Doctor's introduction and also how to reach him. There's his email address. And the title of his paper today is Mindfulness in Education, Innovative Adaptations of Contemplative Pedagogy for Children and Youth around the world.
Thank you.
Doctor.
Thank you. In the context of time, I'll just thank the organizers for bringing me here. And every one of you being here, allowing me to share something and to update you on what's happening with Dharma-based perspectives when we try to adapt them for children. How do I change slides? Which one? Which one? Okay, good. I'm coming from Israel, just to cut it short. Buddhism exists in Israel. Many sanghas, very active sanghas, which means we have representations of different Buddhist traditions, Mahayana, Theravada, Thich Nhat Hanh. His Holiness Dalai Lama came to Israel a few times. We have retreats, sitting groups, seminars, Hebrew publications, a few teachers here that have been in Israel, and this is the website if you want to come or if you want to learn more. Brief, I have a variety of background from aeronautical engineering in the 70s to natural medicine in the 80s to Dharma-based activities and mind-body-based activities in the 90s, and for the last 25 years, I'm mostly interested in the world, strange world called children. Relating to Buddhism, as we know, Buddhism was separated from the West. It was mostly in the East. Buddhism made immigration around the 60s, 70s, and 80s, and then about at that time, mostly in the States, holism and Buddhism mingled together. In the background was the Association for Transpersonal Psychology in the States, Holistic Medical Association in the States, beginning of retreats in the States, and from one of these retreats, the therapeutic model of mindfulness was invented, mindfulness-based stress reduction, mindfulness-based cognitive therapy, that from the 80s until now, with a lot of research that shows that, as we can see in the right here, that there are intermediate means, meaning that the Dharma can be taken as Dharma for the high-end transformation, but there are steps in between that can be useful for therapy and, in our discussion, for education. And what we see, just cutting the long story short, that in the last 25 years, different sprouts of Dharma-based activities for children showed up around the world, mostly without knowing about each other. In Israel, that started in a program 25 years ago called Sfat HaKeshev, the Hebrew meaning the language of listening. In USA, we have a few programs, only 2 are represented here. There are a whole lot of many. In Bhutan, it's part of the Educating for GNH. In New Zealand, it's Pause, Breathe and Smile, PBS, and it's integrated with the Maori, the original tribes of New Zealand perspective, in the Dharma-based perspective in schools. In the United Kingdom, many, but mostly one called .B, Mindfulness in School Project. In Australia, Smiling Mind, which is an application, and there are more programs. In Austria, cognitive-based and compassion-based. And all this can show us that there's something happening that children are beginning to experience without being Buddhist and without being in the East. Most of them are in the West. Most of them are children from age 5, 6 to 16. And we are beginning to understand, or to explore, not to understand, but to explore, how can we translate the Dharma and the meditations to the language of children and to the world of children, which means addressing their inner needs. As you can see also from the dates, 1998, 2002, 2005, 2007, 2009, 2010 and 2012, and there's more. This is the beginning of the evolution, and there's more because we are now 10 years later. If we look at the search in science, mindfulness and meditation, from almost 0 in 1990 to almost 3,000 articles a year now, from 0 to now, about 3,000 articles a year where mindfulness and meditation are mentioned. In the context of mindfulness in education, mindfulness as education, until 2000 we have 0, and from the year 2000, the last 20, or soon it will be 25 years, it's about soon 1,000 articles, scientific articles a year. When I began this work, I didn't know about children. I mean, I was a dad to a young child, but it was not my expertise. Actually, very few are experts about children. And so I had to search, what is a child? I knew what is a computer, I knew what is a car, I was an aeronautical engineer, I knew how to design airplanes, but a child. So I found this quote, which I still like today. Children wants to learn, and the key is total involvement. When the child put all of himself or herself into the experience called education, his body, his mind, emotion, imagination, enthusiasm, then he will learn and he will grow, not only in that specific topic, but he will grow as a whole person. And then I found another guidance for me in a book that was designed for hypnotherapy for children, with children. And the author, psychiatrist, children expert from the States, Karen Ulner, said each child have 5 inner needs. Call it urge, or we can call yearning for. Each child have yearning for positive experience. As parents, we are supposed to give it. We need even to figure what is the right positive experience needed now, to move or to feed, to give water, or to sing. We need to figure it out. Every child has an urge for wellness, which is an experience. Every child has an urge for mastery, sense of control, sense of efficacy. Every child has an inner strong need for social interaction, sense of connectedness, and the inner world of imagination. And I said, okay, how can we design programs that take the Dharma, take this into equation? What is the product? What kind of programs shows up? And we know that the children now today are in good luck for the world, because the world of the future depends on the children of today. And the children of today, we want to do something which education usually is lacking in doing. We want to develop self-awareness. We want to improve self-regulation. We want to improve resilience and self-efficacy. We want to cultivate qualities of the heart and passion, compassion, forgiveness, etc. We want to develop social emotional skill because no one is alone. We want to prevent risk behavior which is on the rise. We have to enhance mind-body health, which is declining among children and youth. And we want to improve learning that wouldn't hurt. And there is no pedagogy that can do that. And what we found, what we are beginning to find from all around the world, is the Dharma-based application can do that, if we do it right. This is just a few quotes. Quotes are not science quotes, are personal quotes, but they can tell us something. This is from Israel. She is age 10, and she said, during these classes, 45 minutes, not 45 minutes silence. It's an integration of imagery, movement, silence, Q&A, question and answer, mini Dharma talks to the children. And then she said, during these classes, my tensions pass away like clouds in the sky. I like the image, that she's using imagery, not losing it yet. I love these classes because during each class, I can feel the calmness and goodness within myself. And I can say that when I was 10 years old, I didn't know I have calmness and goodness in me. I had no idea that this world exists. Or this one, Sonia, age 11. These classes teach us what everyone needs to know. I have no idea how she knows. This is what everyone needs to know. How to be quiet, they teach us. How to rest. How to breathe. How to relax. How to imagine. And how to discover the peaceful places within. And this one is saying, these lessons teach us about body, breath, and health, their movement and moments. Just the vocabulary is amazing for me. We learn about helpful concentration, originally it was in Hebrew. We learn about helpful concentration, peaceful thoughts, and serenity in the mind. We learn about stillness, about exploring inner worlds, and about the images that can guide us to find our safe and peaceful places. And for what I figured after sort of connecting to most programs in the world, New Zealand, Bhutan, Israel, United Kingdom, Canada, USA, Austria, Holland, there's more, Scotland, more. There are different 5 ways of teaching, and each program is missing something. But this is taken from the Dharma perspective. First, we have explanation. We call it Dharma talks. Then we have experience. We call it retreats, meditations. Then we have self-expression. This is when we want to say something, sometimes to ourselves. And then there's inquiry. When we inquire the teacher, or the teacher is inquiring us. Did we figure it? How did we figure it? And then how do we apply it? Because it's not only for the cave, it's for life. And so the question for me, not to you, but to all these experts, is how can we translate these 5 principles, like 5 fingers? How can we take the Dharma principles and the application, the insight into action, meditation, and transfer it to children, bridge it to children, to their world, to their needs, to their language, to their wishes. And what we see now in the world, because it's all around the world, that it can be done. It should be refined. We should cook it better. We should mix it better. We should refine it and refine it with your help, if you wish. Whoever here wants to contribute, I welcome you to connect. And we can, as we can begin to see, we can create a transformative way of teaching and learning universally, not only for monks or nuns or Buddhists or people in Asia, Thailand, Cambodia, India. We can apply it in all languages. In Israel, it's in Hebrew. In New Zealand, it's in Maori. that should and can influence, and is beginning to influence schools, colleges of education, just beginning. It's more than beginning to touch educators who are learning it and applying it, It's influencing the teaching because it's not only close your eyes for 3 minutes. It's a whole teaching. Dharma is not only close your eyes and breathe. Dharma is deeper and wider than closing the eyes. So there's a whole curriculum that can be applied. There's a whole pedagogy which depends on the teacher and his way of teaching it. Not only on what he's teaching, but how he is teaching and how he is embodying the teaching. There's the learner role, and there's the school culture and climate that can change. There was one school in Israel, it was the school where we started in Israel. Almost 25 years ago. Very difficult. Grades were low, violence was high. And 10 years later, systematically, week by week, all the classes from age 6 to 12, week by week, year by year, 10 years later, that school became among the top 3 in Israel in academic and education climate. So we can see that that could be done if we do it right. And there's a lot to learn, there's a lot to develop, there's a lot to cultivate from each other.
Одоо олон зүйлийг одоо хөгжүүлэх хэрэгтэй. Өсрөх ажил байна.
For development of consciousness and the
reconstruction of society.
And now we have a catch-up. The World Health Organization is saying schools should promote health, not only give information, but create health. Schools should be institute for health. UNESCO is how to know, how to do, how to be, and how to live together. And that's what education should become. OECD, Future of Education, says the role of education is to help every learner develop as a whole person. This is an economic association, OECD, in Europe. To help every learner to develop as a whole person, fulfill his or her potential, help shape a future built on the well-being of individuals, communities, and the planet. It's not happening yet, and it's not a job of one person. That's why I urge you to communicate, collaborate, and contribute. The Lama obviously said it too. Time has come for us to consider seriously how to change our way of life, not through prayers or religious teaching, but through education, which is a new role, a new job description for what school is, what teacher is, and what education is. Thank you very much. This is, by the way, a statue from Nam Tien Institute in Australia, a Buddhist institute and academic institute, and all around the monastery was full of these small children, and the nuns pulled my hand because they knew how to do it. They have statues, but they didn't know how to do it. Thank you very much.
Thank you. That's beautiful. Thank you, Dr. Shimon. So it's wonderful. We have a Sangha member, and then we have an educator. And next we're going to welcome a psychologist. Let us welcome Dr. Nanja Holland Hansen, who has been working in the States internationally for the past 17 years. And she's going to speak on compassion training for informal caregivers of people with a mental illness. Results of a randomized clinical trial and mediators driving the effect. Please, the floor is yours.
Thank you. Before I start, I want to apologize for being late. I'm very jet-lagged, and so my body is right now, so I had to go. But I'm here now, so I just want to first of all say thank you so much for inviting me to speak on the research that we're conducting in Denmark. So I wanted to just start by giving a little bit of context as to kind of the rings in the water. And back in 2009, 2010, His Holiness the Dalai Lama had and several conversations with a neurosurgeon called Dr. James Doty at Stanford University. And two of them, I'm sure with others, decided to develop a center called Compassion C Care for short, Center for Compassionate Altruism Research and Education. And this center really had two intentions. One was to develop a program, a secular compassion cultivation training program that anybody who were interested in these types of practices could join a course. And the other intention was to do research around this program. And so they invited Dr. Thupten Jimpa, who is His Holiness long-term English translator, to develop this program along with collaborators at Stanford University. And so from there, if we go down a little bit, the Compassion Institute in the U.S. is a nonprofit organization where Dr. Thupten Jimpa is the president. And really, they're working on bringing these practices into mainstream institutions within the U.S.
Тэдгээр практикийг одоо Америкт нэвтрүүлэх
where I conduct research, we are also bringing these secularized compassion training programs into different institutions and organizations.
Олон институтэд нэвтрүүлсэн.
So I want to say when we started back in 2017, this was a brand new field of research. Nobody was doing any research on compassion training. They were conducting research on mindfulness-based stress reduction, cognitive therapy, but compassion was actually not a word that we were talking about in Denmark at this point. And so we really started off with doing a pilot study just to see if Danes would even sign up for a compassion training program. Would they even come for 8 weeks? Would they start practicing? And luckily we had good results with that, and so we ventured into conducting a randomized control trial for informal caregivers of people with a mental illness. And so really a question was this a good match? Our thought was that it is, in terms of caregivers dealing with a tremendous amount of suffering every single day, just due to the fact that they are caregivers. And so here's just a brief overview of the 8 steps of the program. Really each step builds on each other, so kind of thinking about a muscle. If you're going to the gym, you don't start off with 40 kilos, you start with 2, and you build from there. So that's really kind of the
Again,
the 4 first steps are more looking at or practicing mindfulness and compassion and loving kindness towards self and own suffering, and then and bringing in more common humanity, compassion for all sentient beings, and active compassion. And so really one of our thoughts, and this comes from many years of doing clinical work with people of all types, but really one of the things that I found was informal caregivers came to therapy because they were feeling stressed or anxious or depressed. A lot of times they had no idea how to take care of themselves. They had no idea how to deal with all the suffering, all the struggles that they were facing on a daily basis. And so when we were thinking about whether this would be a good population to conduct our research with, this was actually one of the intentions that were coming from our And so CCT, Compassion Cultivation Training, the program developed at Stanford defines compassion as really having these 4 components, a cognitive, an affective, an intentional, and a motivational component. And so our primary hypothesis was that informal caregivers going through an 8-week of compassion cultivation training would not only reduce symptoms of stress, anxiety, and depression, but it would also increase overall well-being. And so we included all types of informal caregivers. We said, you can be a parent, you can be a sibling, you can be a spouse, you can be an adult child of a person with dementia. And we included all types of mental illnesses because our premise was sort of, it doesn't matter what kind of mental illness you're still going to feel so much suffering due to the fact that you have a loved one who is suffering. So that was another premise that we had. And so, again, we included people between originally between 18 and 65 years old, because 65 seems to be kind of the golden cutoff in research. And when we started recruiting, a lot of informal caregivers would call and say, I'd like to participate, but I'm over 65. And since I didn't really have a great reason besides this is kind of what the research literature is showing, we added, or we increased the age to 75. And I will say the oldest caregiver we had was 75 years old, and the youngest was about 21. And again, they had to be Danish speaking. And we also, so we had these exclusion criterias, and so one was really that the informal caregiver could have had or could actively have depression, anxiety, stress, or another type of disorder, but they had to be treated. And so, meaning we know from the literature that up to 50% of informal caregivers are at increased risk of developing depression, stress, and anxiety. So the fact that they're caregivers. And so we didn't want to exclude them. And again, no addiction, and they were not allowed to have a meditation practice, so these were novices. They might have tried meditation on an app or something like that, but if they had more than a 1-year-long practice, we had to exclude them. And also if they were receiving psychological treatment. And so our main outcome was the DAS, the Depression Anxiety Stress Scale, and then we had a kind of a lot of different secondary outcome measures to look at general well-being from a lot of different angles. So here you just see
Олон өнцгөөс одоо хувийн эрүүл аж төрөх хэсэг стресс судлаа хийсэн.
Emotion regulation, compassion for own suffering, multidimensional compassion scale which really was looking at compassion for others and mindfulness.
Энэ л нэгүүлс олон
And so we
төлөв
actually
бясалгал.
had 192 caregivers who were interested in participating in this research, and we included 161 participants.
161 оролцогч энэ хөө судалгаанд оролцсон.
Block randomization, so every time we had 40 caregivers who were interested in participating, then we would randomize 20 either to get the intervention or 20 received the waitlist control or came into the waitlist control. And then we collected data at 4 different measurement times. So we had before they started the intervention, right after they finished, so 8 weeks after, and then 3 and 6 months follow-up. And so our demographics were really very in line with what we see in the literature. It's predominantly women who were or participated in the research. They were about 55 years old. They were well-educated for some time, and their loved one had usually more than one mental illness, so there was quite some comorbidity there. And so here's our primary results. So we were looking at whether or not an 8-week compassion cultivation training program would decrease symptoms of depression, stress, and anxiety.
7-ны энэ л нэгүүлсрийн програм руу за депресс стрессийг одоо арилгаж чадж байсан.
This was our latest follow-up. And again, you just see that these are either if we're just looking at the people who were in the intervention group, or if we're looking at the difference between the people who received the intervention and who were on the waitlist control. And regarding our secondary follow-up, again, we saw they had increased resilience, well-being. They were able to think about or engage with the suffering in a different way cognitively. They had increased their compassion for own suffering and mindfulness. And again, all of these results were significant at the 6-month follow-up. And again, they had decreased stress, and they had decreased their emotion suppression, which really is talking about increasing the ability to be with suffering. And again, these results were significant at 6-month follow-up. We found no results for compassion for others. And we have a couple of thoughts on that. So one was when we were doing the intervention, giving the intervention to the caregivers, and we would move towards week 6 and 7, which is more of the compassion for all sentient beings, active compassion. A lot of caregivers would say, I give so much compassion to others every single day. I want to stay and learn how to take care of my own suffering. So that was one thing that was really showing up a lot.
Бууруулж чадчихсан. Гэтэ одоо би өөрөө зовлон хэрхэн бууруулах вэ гэж хүмүүс надаас асууж байсан.
There was a great piece of research done from a group at the University of Sussex in England.
Англиас Sussex-ийг сурвалд
The measurements that we have that we can use to measure compassion for others, and they're really not that good yet. So there needs to be we need to either develop better measurements to measure this construct, or think about how to measure it in a different way than how we're currently measuring it. Because I don't actually think that it's not that they didn't have it. I just think it's how we measure. And so we concluded that it is possible, and with good results, to give a compassion cultivation training program to informal caregivers. These are people who have no experience with practices, and they really benefited from the practice. And again, his limitation was no active control group, so we can't say that this intervention was better than another. And as is kind of customary in intervention research, there's some potential bias because caregivers knew if they were receiving the intervention or not, and we used self-reported questionnaires. So then we asked the question, well, now we have seen effect from this training, but what is kind of causing or driving the effect? What are the mediators, the active ingredients within this program? And so we had a kind of a specific hypothesis that if the informal caregivers increased their compassion for own suffering, their mindfulness, well, that would then in turn increase their ability to regulate their emotions, which would then cause this decrease that we were seeing in society.
өөрсдийнхөө эмоцийг ч гэсэн
удирдах сурдаг. We were interested in investigating. One was compassion for own suffering, one was mindfulness, and the third was emotion regulation. And the results when we did a single mediational analysis was that we found all three to actually be driving the effect of the CCT program on decreasing depressions of stress, anxiety, and depression. When we then did a multiple mediational analysis, we found different picture. And what we saw was that compassion for own suffering and mindfulness drove the effect of CCT on decreasing stress and depression, but mindfulness alone drove the effect on CCT of decreasing anxiety. And so again, if we think about this in a clinical setting, then this is helpful for us if we have clients who come in and they are dealing with more anxiety perhaps, then these results can help us sort of navigate on what might be helpful in terms of support.
Энэ талаар асуудалтай хүмүүст манай програм туслах боломжтой.
So one of the conclusions that we drew from the results is really thinking about compassion for own suffering, for other suffering, and mindfulness as being these self-regulating mechanisms. And again, this is
өөрийнхөө болон бусдын зовлон арилгах, стресс, депрессийг бууруулах боломжтой.
And we had 4 timelines or 4 time points, which makes our results a little more helpful. So perspectives, and this is again just thinking about these, rings in the water of where we started, where we're headed. And so at the university, we are doing implementational research. So we're taking the results that we got from the randomized controlled trial and trying to figure out, can we implement them into society? can we bring these practices and this
эдгээр
interventions
одоо
to
нийгэм
caregivers
хамт
who
олондоо
actually
хэрэгжүүлэх
benefit from it?
боломжтой юу?
Because one thing is just, doing the research, but can it actually then come out and be used out into society? So that's one of our perspectives, one of the things that we're doing. And then we're conducting feasibility research. So we're trying to understand if you give compassion training to at-risk youth, their parents and the professionals working with the at-risk youth and their families.
Мөн за эрсдэлтэй нөхцөлд байгаа одоо хүүхд залуучуудад мөн энэ хөтөлбөрийг хэрэгжүүлэх боломжтой.
And again, looking at bringing compassion practices into families where they're dealing with type 1 diabetes, so the children have been diagnosed with type 1 diabetes and the parents are trying to figure out how to deal with this and not drive each other crazy. And so just to also mention the Compassion Institute and their collaborators, so they are working with University of California, San Diego to bring compassion into medical education and academic health. So again, you were talking about bringing it into education. We are not that far with young kids yet. Бид одоохондоо хүүхд залуучууд руу арай хандж эхлэегүй байна. Гэтэ бид хандж эхлэх болно. Into people who are police to try and see if that might actually do something in terms of ethnic profiling, for example. And then there's systems transformation. So these are ways in which we're trying some of the research in Denmark and some of the collaborations in the US, trying to bring these practices and into mainstream society. And I will say one of the main challenges that we're facing in Denmark is that this is a new field.
Нийгэмд одоо чиглэж ажиллах хэрэгтэй
we don't
гэсэн тийм үр
actually
дүн
have a great
гарсан.
Danish word to translate it into. So we're using compassion, and that confuses a lot of people. They don't know what it is. What does it mean? Denmark is a pretty non-secular country, and if we are religious, we don't really talk about it. So also, sometimes people will accuse us of bringing Buddhism back door and so forth. So there's all these challenges facing us when we conduct research and bring these practices into society. And at the same time, we couldn't do what we have done if we didn't have a secular intervention like the CCT program to actually bring in. And it holds really heavy that we're at the Department of Department of Medicine at the university. So again, it's all these different layers of how to actually bring these wonderful practices into mainstream institutions, organizations, and hopefully to continue to show that they certainly do improve our mental health. So thank you very much for listening.
Thank you very much, Dr. Hansen. All right, so after the psychologist, now we come to the medical professional. Let us welcome Dr. who is going to speak to us about the neuroscience of Vipassana and well-being.
За нейрошинжлэх ухааны талаар ярих болно.
Excuse me. We seem to have some technical issues still.
За техник асуудал гарч байгаа шүү байна.
So So while we're still working on the technical issue, so Dr. Jyoti Kakumanu is a medical director of clinical research
Dr. Jyoti за клиникийн судалгааны
Urolin Center, Orlando, USA.
Америк.
She manages interventional research involving broad range of disease specialties.
Олон төрлийн өвчнөр
Comprehensive clinical
судалгаа
care
хийсэн.
through participating physician teams. She's a medical professional with a doctoral degree in cognitive neurosciences. And her PhD involves interdisciplinary area of neurosciences, Vipassana, mental health, and well-being. She has a master's degree in Buddhist philosophy, for which she was awarded
Буддын философи магистрийн зэрэгтэй
its kind in India. She underwent extensive training in Vipassana practice and certificate courses in Pali and Sanskrit. She
Pali болон Санскрит хэлээр
talks at Bangkok, Myanmar.
өндөр төлбөртэй тэгээ сургалтанд сурж байсан.
She has publications in international scientific journals and conference proceedings.
Олон улсын шинжлэх ухааны сэтгүүлүүдэд нийтлэл хэвлүүлж байсан.
Modern healthcare with applied aspects of Buddha's teachings. So she's keen on developing applied Buddhism by
Бурхны шашныг одоо хэрхэн хэрэгжүүлэх вэ?
doctrinal matters of Buddhist
Энэ талаар судалгаа хийж байсан.
and she's very much accomplished. So for which actually the
Олон
committee I
төрлийн
was told
мэдлэгтэй хүн бий.
is going to give her a little extra time in order to explain to us the relationship between neuroscience with Vipassana and well-being. So
Нейро шинжлэх ухаан, Vipassana
still
Thank you
good.
so much.
болон эрүүл ажил төрхөөс.
Okay, since we are still waiting, earlier I mentioned that
хүлээж
my
авцгаа.
green Tara mantra was used by the 3 young women to raise funds for
миний
residents
дөрөв
in
яриад байсан.
Ukraine, right? I
Украины
actually have another song which I'm globally campaigning for people to sing in different languages, which is called We All
цацагдж
Have
байсан миний дуу.
Moms. You know, if only we can remember, we all have mothers. You know, why are we harming each other? Why are we killing each other?
Бид яагаад
Right?
би нэг
Anyway,
хөнөөж байна
it's
вэ?
on. I can sing for you later after the talk.
Би дараа нь
All right.
дуулах болно.
Let's give her another round of applause. Welcome.
За алга ташин хүлээж авъя.
Thank you so much for your patience and appreciate the technical
Та
support.
нарын төвчээрт маш
They,
баярлалаа.
in the last minute, they were able to, resolve the issue.
За техник асуудлыг
I
бид
think
нар
we should
шийдэж
be able
чадна гэж
to
би итгэж байна.
Smooth. be able to get the lights laser. The pointer, I should be able to point it out there. No, there's no defect. Whatever effect, I should be able to show it on the screen. Whatever light, yeah. So whatever way it is possible, I'll have. I'm sorry again. Okay, in the meantime, that's a good idea. Most of my presentation will be on the neuroscience of Vipassana.
За миний хэлтлийн
Most
их
of this
хэсэг нь
work has been carried out at
нейро шинжлэх ухаан болон Vipassana-гийн
Institute
талаар
of Mental Health and Neurosciences, Bangalore, India, and
За манай
Professor
төвний
Dr.
Энэтхэгийн
Pan
Бангалорд байдаг.
and Dr. Bindu Kutti played a key role in this project. And
Доктор Виндикути
in
за энэ
fact, we
хөтөлсөлд
were to
гол хувь нэмэр оруулсан.
develop clinical models on this because, as Dr. Robert has said, and we all know that
Доктор Робертийн хэлсэнчлэн
Buddha has set out of, Siddhartha Gautama has set out of his palace to find an answer for suffering. And
Сиддхарта
that made him a
за залгын шалтгааныг олохын тулд өөрийнхөө ордонг орхиж явсан.
Then there is so much of medical potential in the Buddhist thought, and we were to uncover the medical dimension of the Buddhist
Буддийн
teachings.
сургаалыг за анх ухаанд за хэрэглэх
At that point
боломжтой.
of time, unfortunately, I was denied a position that I was initially promised at NIMHANS, and so we couldn't move further. We were to develop clinical models and apply it in the clinical settings as well.
За бидний клиникийн моделийг гаргаж ирсэн.
So I should to go to the next slide. So and I should use this one.
This is the one pointer.
And I think it is very important for us, even though I was unable to, or we were unable to do whatever we wanted to do at NIMHANS, now that the IBC has taken a shape, I hope this momentum will continue, and one day we'll be able to really
Олон Буддист холбооны
uncover
их чухал
the
ажил
medical
хийж байна.
potential of the Buddhist thought. And that's the reason why Siddhartha Gautama has set out of his palace. And one day we should be able to see many patients getting benefited out of this invaluable teaching.
Олон
So
одоо
maybe
өвчтнүүд
IBC would,
энэхүү
this momentum will continue, and one
үнцэн
day
бүхий
IBC, I
сургаалаас
might team up with IBC to take this vision forward.
эрэг зүйлийг одоо олж авч гэдэгт би итгэж байна.
Anyway, let me get to the point. The contemplative practices that work as antidotes to suffering are available in all schools of Buddhism. That is, in the Theravada, in the Mahayana, and in the Vajrayana traditions.
Theravada,
But this
Vajrayana
presentation is primarily going to be on the practices based in the Mahasatipatthana Sutta, a Pali discourse of the Theravada tradition.
Theravada уламжлалын Пали
It
судар.
is known as Smriti Prasthana Sutra in Sanskrit.
Санскрит хэлээр
The
судар.
Satipatthana word, the meaning of Satipatthana is to get established in mindfulness. When someone
Бясалгал
gets
төлөвлөлийг
established in
олж авахыг
mindfulness,
сургадаг.
it will culminate in the development of a special ability called Vipassana, Vipassana is the ability to see the reality as it is. That is why this practice is commonly known as mindfulness practice, Vipassana meditation, or insight meditation. Now, let us see the neuroscience part of it. This is the brain structure. This is, in fact, this is called the cerebrum. Sorry, this laser is not very effective. This is the cerebrum. And you see the green region here, that is called the entire green portion, this is called the frontal lobe, and the protruding part is called the prefrontal lobe. The pink one is called the parietal lobe, the yellow one is called the temporal lobe. Why these regions are important? Because Vipassana is going to affect these three brain regions in a significant way. And as I said, this is a normal adult brain. That means the so-called normal individuals, this is how the brain looks like. Actually, the right word for it is cerebrum, but for now, for convenience sake, I'm just using the word brain. So then, when the brain looks so similar in all of us, why is it that we are very different in our behaviors, in our actions, ижилхэн хэлбэр төрстэй байдаг. Гэтэ бидний заавар яагаад өөр байдаг вэ? Why is it that we are all very different? It is because though outwardly the brain looks similar, if you examine it under a microscope, this is how it's going to be.
За дахин микроскопоор харуул ингэж харагдана.
Entire brain is made up of billions of cells called brain cells which have a
тэрбум эсвүүд тархин дотор байдаг.
The unique feature of these neurons is that every neuron is connected to the other neuron.
Неврон болгон өөр невронтой холбогддог.
This is called wiring. Every neuron is
wiring гэж нэрлэдэг.
That is the reason why the entire brain is able to function in harmony, in synchrony. And when you examine these
невронуудаас хамаарч бидний зан авир бий болдог.
Examine, you will see that these neurons are star-shaped.
Тэгээд невронууд нь од хэлбэртэй.
Picture, you will see that these neurons are star-shaped and they have multiple branches and they have long processes and they get interconnected with the other neurons. So
бусад невронтой холбогдсон байдаг.
will extend their processes and connect with the neurons of the same region as well as with the neurons of the other regions as well. And this entire thing is, so the entire brain that you see here is nothing but a bunch of wires.
Бүхэл бүтэн тархин нь болохоор
the brain wire.
Wire-аар холбогдсон байдаг. Утсаар холбогдсон.
This brain wiring is not going to happen in a haphazard way. The brain wiring is entirely dependent on the kind of sensory input that the brain continuously receives. From the 5 sense organs, as you know, the eyes, ears, nose, taste, and also the patterns. The patterns that are responsible are greatly dependent upon the kind of sensory input from your childhood. From infancy to childhood to adulthood, and so the greater if the inputs get repetitive, then these particular patterns get so much. So the greater the repetition, the greater will be the hardness in the wiring of the brain patterns. And these brain patterns are responsible for our behaviors, perceptions, emotions, reactions, and all of these are like encoded within these brain wiring mechanisms.
Тархины wiring-тай холбоотой.
These subjective factors that are encoded within the brain wiring are also responsible for our suffering. The subjective factors intervene between our perception and the facts of life, the reality. When there is incompatibility between the reality and our perception, inevitably there will be suffering. There will be a conflict. Whenever there is a conflict,
за бодит байдал төсөөл хоёрын хооронд ялгаа гарвал зовлон бий болдог.
When there is a mismatch, suffering is the result of a mismatch or a conflict between the reality and perceptions because of the influence of the subjective factors which are going to distort the reality and color at the reality. And here, if you go back in time, suffering is ageless and timeless. If you go back in time, you see the grief Kisa Gautami underwent at the loss of her child. She doesn't want to believe that her son was dead. And here is the story of Patachara. She doesn't want to believe either. In today's terms, they have schizophrenic.
Үүнийг хүлээн зөвшөөрч чадахгүй байдаг.
And the suffering can be as gross as this, or it can be as subtle as some kind of uneasiness that we don't even realize that we have some kind of suffering going on in our background of our minds, some kind of discomfort. So the ancient stories hold good even to this day. And that's why that's what the central teaching of the Buddha, the Vipassana, it is called the Visuddhimagga because it is going to cleanse us of these subjective factors that distort the reality. The ego, the hatred, the selfishness, attachment, they're all going to distort our perceptions, and Vipassana is an effective way to clear these subjective elements and get them out of our way. Vipassana, another example is, suppose I'm in a state of fear. In state of fear, I see this coiled structure as a snake. Suppose I see the same coiled structure as a rope. But when the subjective factors are removed, suppose I'm free of fear, recklessness, or arrogance, elements that really corrupt my vision, then I will see the reality in its own light. That is, I see, if it is a rope, I see it as a rope. If it is a snake, I see it as a snake. Here is an amazing brain phenomenon called brain plasticity or neuroplasticity. How is it possible for the Vipassana practice to eliminate the subjective factors? It is because Vipassana is able to utilize and take advantage of a phenomenon in the brain called brain plasticity or neuroplasticity. Up until 1960s, researchers believed that this brain is it's so rigid, and whatever we could learn during infancy and childhood until early adulthood, it was believed that that's going to remain, and beyond that the brain is not going to change. It's going to be static and unchanging. But nowadays, and I think during the past 20 to 30 decades, there is a revolutionary research that where the neuroscientists came to know that brain is designed to adapt constantly. Brain undergoes constant change and it adapts to new experiences. It tries to learn. It tries to take new memories. It tries to take in new information, and it processes new experiences. So the brain is not as hardwired as the scientists have initially thought. And this wiring is what Vipassana practice, the long-term Vipassana practice is exactly targeting this hard wiring pattern of the
Вившана за тархины вайруудыг
what the neuroscience
за өөрчилж хуургаж чаддаг.
our ancestors knew it and applied it as well.
Бидний өвгдөд үүнийг мэддэг байсан. Тэгээ хэрэгжүүлдэг байсан.
When you train your mind to be mindful, you are in fact remodeling this physical structure of the brain.
Өөртөө сэтгэл оюуныг
When you are establishing
анхаарч эхэлснээр за тархийг одоо өөрчилж хуургаж чаддаг болдог.
it's a kind of unlearning. You are unwiring and rewiring the brain networks in desirable ways. This amazing capability of the brain to adapt to new experiences
За хүний бие ийм гайхалтай чадвартай байдаг.
and that goes on even though it goes on, it happens throughout our life. It doesn't end at any point.
Энэ нь бидний бүхий л амьдралын бүхий л үед тохиолдож болно.
From a
Яг нэг
Buddhist
зэгтээ үрээ зогсдгүй.
cognitive factors or the emotional factors. Cognitive factors means attention, concentration, reasoning, logic, analysis, all of these higher capabilities that
Анхаарал төвлөрөх гэх мэт дээд зэргийн чадварууд
abilities that a human is capable of, they're all changeable from a Buddhist point of view. Similarly,
буддын
the
бурхны шашны
emotions such as
үднэс
hatred, jealousy, anger, these are all also changeable. None of
эдгээрийг
them
одоо
are
өөрчлөн хуурах боломжтой.
predetermined.
Үзэн ядалт уур уцаа зэрэг бүхий л сөрөг зүйлийг одоо эерэг болгож өөрчлөх боломжтой.
Emotional factors is highly malleable, and this is where the the promising claim of the Buddhists is that since the mind is malleable, vipassana will be able to alter, the practice of vipassana will be able to alter these cognitive and emotional components that really
Вившана
put
бяцлалаар
us in trouble. In this sense,
тархины үйл ажиллагаанд ингээд нөлөөлөх боломжтой болдог.
learning any other new skill,
Шинэ
just like
чадваруудыг
you
сурах
learn,
гэх мэт
math, music, sports, or dance,
математик,
vipassana
спорт,
is also
бүжиг
a new skill that the brain can be trained with.
үүнийг ингээд тарих хүлээж авч чаддаг болдог.
We all know that if you practice yoga, if you go to gym,
За
it's
йог
going to
хийх,
reshape
жимд явах.
and retone your muscles. In the similar way, the mental exercise, the vipassana, the way it
Энэ нь
changes
оюун ухааны
the
дасгал
mental
болдог.
patterns is going to affect the physical structure of the brain and rewire and reshape the physical structure as well
Вившана
as
бяцлалаар
the
за
functions of the
тархины
brain.
бүтцийг өөрчлөх боломжтой.
And here are the outcome of certain meditative practices.
За
And
бяцлалын юм
studies have
хэд
shown
хэдэн үр дүнгууд бий.
once the brain gets modulated, if the brain changes, those effects are going to percolate down into the body systems, and you can see observable changes.
За энэ бүх чадрууд одоо хүний биед за шингэж ордог.
Some of the scientific studies have shown that there is an improvement in obsessive compulsive disorders, anxiety disorders, depression, drug addiction,
Судалгаагаар
post-traumatic stress
за
disorders,
сэтгцийн
and there is
өвчтнүүд
improvement in immune functions, decrease in blood pressure, decrease in
Хүний
cortisol
цусны
hormone, which is a stress hormone.
цусны даалтыг бууруулах боломжтой.
In the management of pain, there is
Өвдөлтийг
enhanced
багасгах.
immune functions. These are all the studies I have mentioned. These are all the studies happen globally. In
Энэ талаар судалгаа дэлхийд дахинд хийгдсэн. Вившана бяцлалаар ийм сайн үр дүнгууд гарч ирдэг.
Which is not done, I'm mentioning here. And how do we really know? How do we really measure these changes? Is there a are there valid methods to understand these brain changes? Yes, definitely.
За
To the
тархины
extent
өөрчлөлтийг одоо
technology
хэрхэн
allows, we can
анзаарах вэ?
understand the changes that the vipassana brings in. Primarily at NIMHANS, we use these scientific methods. The first one is electroencephalograph, which is called the EEG. And the second one is the functional magnetic resonance imaging called fMRI. We can also do hormonal assessments to understand the stress level. That means if there is an increased cortisol in your blood, that means you have high stress. There is a measurement of autonomic parameters like breath and heart rate. There are correlational studies. How meditation is related to your, for example, let's say anger. Is your anger going down with your meditative practice? That is called correlational studies. In our project, there are other methods, fractional anisotropy and all that. For now, we'll just move on. That will take time to explain. This is functional magnetic resonance imaging. This is how it looks like. The principle of this method is that it detects oxygen consumption levels of the brain regions. It is going to consume more oxygen and draw more blood. And the levels of oxygen consumption and the levels of the blood that has been drawn into those particular regions. And if a particular brain area is not active, then it's not going to take that much of oxygen and that much of hemoglobin. So, in fact, fMRI is able to identify and detect the brain regions that get activated and also the brain regions that get suppressed during Vipassana practice. And please don't get scared by this image. I can just put it in simple words. This is the fMRI captured images. This study was done by Tang et al. And the right side image is the full brain. And this is the section of the brain. And you can see that these dark blue structures, there are 8 in number. These are the brain areas that are consistently involved during Vipassana practice. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, and 8. 8 brain regions are known to be consistently involved in the practice of Vipassana. It's called the prefrontal lobe. This is playing a very significant role in meditation, especially in Vipassana meditation, and this region stands for cognition. The more it gets activated, the higher the cognitive abilities are. There is an improvement in the way you reason and or investigate. So all of these functions are actually part of this prefrontal cortex, and this is the anterior cingulate cortex or ACC. This is a very important system of the brain. How do I know if I am doing right or wrong? This is the brain region that determines. And if you are supposed to walk on the left side of the road, but you are walking on the right side of the road, then this is the brain region that gets alerted and immediately initiates corrective measures. And the studies have also shown that this is the limbic area of the brain, which is the emotional center of the brain, and this gets suppressed. I'm not showing it here. There is increased retention of increased activation of hippocampus, and hippocampus is the seat of memory, but there are more studies are required. Hippocampus and you see here, this part is called the insula, and this has got a very critical role in the Vipassana practice. This insula is all about self-awareness. It is not about external awareness. It is about how deep you are able to go inside and know your own mind and body phenomena. So this insula plays a critical role in really getting better at mindfulness.
Doctor, I think we need to have you wrap up.
Yeah.
Okay. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. So I'm going to move fast. And one important aspect here is that because you see that the emotional cortex is suppressed here, and the prefrontal cortex, which is the region for the higher order cognitive capacities, is getting activated. There are two things that are happening. Either the emotional cortex is getting suppressed, or it is coming under the control of the prefrontal cortex. That is, there is a cognitive shift. That is a breakthrough phenomenon where there will no more be instinctual reactions, there will be only thoughtful actions. And maybe I can skip this slide. This is about, one slide that tells that the meditators have higher awareness whenever they commit an error. The meditator's brain, this is the base of the brain. The novice is not even aware of an error that he or she has committed, and this is within 60 milliseconds, not even less than a second, the meditator is aware. And this is the way an electroencephalography is done in the lab. And you can see that this upper panel is that of a novice, the lower panel is that of a long-term practitioner. You can see the density of the base. These are called the